What's up, everybody? This is Susanna, and welcome to the Kodeco podcast. In this podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the latest app development tech talk. Now, here's the show.
Thanks. This is the Kodeco podcast. Welcome to episode 2 for season 1. This episode was recorded on Wednesday, the 28th of October, 2022, for release on Thursday, the 17th of November, 2022. I'm your host, Drew Freeman, along with my awesome co-host, Susanna Skyer-Gupta.
Thanks, Drew. In this episode, we're going to learn way more about the Kodeco rebranding and about rebranding generally.
And we want to welcome to this episode our guest, Chief Marketing Officer of Kodeco, Chris Belanger. Hello, Chris.
Hi, folks. Thanks. It's great to be back in the podcast again. It's been some time.
It has been. But we dragged you back here.
Oh, didn't have to drag me too far. I love talking about this.
I don't know. I got a message a few minutes ago from somebody saying, "You really sure you want me to come on?"
I'm saying I love to talk about it. Whether or not people have to listen to it is a different story. But hopefully there's some nuggets here for everybody.
Well, and of course, you've already tipped one vessel here. You said it, so we have to say that you are actually from far northern area than most of the people in the States. You are living in...
Mostly. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, way on the East Coast. Mostly born and bred here. Wasn't born here, but I pretend I was, so it just makes things easier. But beautiful spot. Yeah, love being up here. Just starting to get cold a little bit. We don't have to build the igloos quite yet, though.
I just came back from being a week on vacation. Was up in Buffalo, and we actually saw a little bit of snow up there last week.
We don't talk about that yet. It's only October.
We don't talk about snow yet?
No, it's only October. Give it a month.
So, as always, we're going to spend a couple of minutes to find out a little bit about Chris rather than about the work and about everything going on. So obviously, the first question is, when you're not attached to Kodeco or Ray or anything that is marketing-wise, what do you do for fun?
Oh, well, you never turn the marketing off. You're always thinking. But I tell you, I'm a huge outdoors enthusiast and huge hiker. I love going hiking with my wife, my dog, my friends. This part of the world is beautiful. How's that song go? We've got mountains, we've got rivers, we've got sights to make you shiver. There's miles and miles and miles of coastline. We have mountains here. We have beautiful river valleys. Like we have everything here. So I do spend a ton of time out just enjoying everything here. And I've lived here almost my entire life and still haven't seen everything I want to see. So it's a lot of outdoor time for sure. It's one of my passions. My wife and I, we go what we call beach chasing. Some people chase storms. We chase beaches, which is a little easier because beaches don't move, unlike storms. But you have to, if you understand the geography of Nova Scotia, we're almost completely surrounded by water. We're almost an island, but not quite. And that means, as far as we can tell, looking at Google Map or Google Earth and our various atlases around, there's about 300 beaches in this area.
Wow.
100 of them are named.
Nice.
And we've tried to visit as many as we can, but coastal property ownership in this place is a little weird, and coastal access is weird. I think it's similar to what we have in California and other coastal places. So we can't actually get to all of them because they end up being private. But I think we've got about 75 or 80 on our list right now. And the old SUV is taking a beating getting down some of these roads. But yeah, there's so much to see here, and I don't think I'll see all of just this area in my lifetime. But that's generally what I love to do. 12 months of the year too. We hit the beach in January. We really do.
Wow, that's a neat hobby.
It's cold.
I have pictures here of us in our parkas, and the wind is just whipping. We've been there in snowstorms, but there's no one else there. It's great. Whole place to ourselves.
You don't polar bear, do you?
No, we were there once. It must have been January. Walking down the beach, and there was actually a few people there, and they were wearing these big, like, teddy bear zip-up onesies, and I'm like, that's odd. Anyways, so the onesies come flying off. They run into the ocean in January, splash around, come back, and we're in our parkas, just like, looking, these people are crazy, but
it's amazing. You get hypothermia watching them.
I do. I got shivers on my back thinking about these people dashing into the Atlantic surf in January. So no, we do not do that. We are
I had a
fair
lot
weather
of friends.
swimmers.
I had a lot of friends in the Pacific Northwest, out in Seattle, who used to polar
Mm.
bear in January. It was a New Year's Day tradition for them, and it's scary. So how's the flora out there? Are you getting good colors?
We did. We had a hurricane come tearing through here just about a month ago, actually. We were out of power for 6 days. It took a fair bit of the leaves off the trees just before they started to turn. Everything was still a bit green. But what was nice is that brought up all this beautiful tropical weather. Following it, it stayed warm. The colors came out. So fall was saved in this
That was
area.
nice.
It was the Grinch that saved fall, basically, in this area. So it's been beautiful as always. And yeah, so except for that little hurricane blip, it's been a beautiful season.
Oh,
Now,
that's really good.
I have been told to ask about a plastic yak that you keep.
Oh, I know that people listening can't see this, but this was given to me some time ago.
They'll see it on the YouTube version.
On YouTube, yeah. So if people like video, I'm not one of those people, but I do podcasts while I'm walking. Her name is Yolanda, and there's a story here. I was at a company retreat in 2019, so when we were still raywenderlich.com. Went to a retreat down Ray's neck of the woods, actually, in Massanutten, Virginia. Beautiful spot, just outside the Blue Ridge Mountains. Like beautiful, beautiful place. Anyways, and we were having one of those fun things that Ray and Vicky and maybe Andrea, I forget, had organized. Anyways, it sort of gave everyone a prize, and there were all kind of silly prizes. Like I have a colleague that surfs with sharks off the south coast of Africa and stuff. Like just these crazy awards. Anyhow, that year I won the Yak Award because, as you both know, having worked with me for a little while now, I can talk forever. So anyways, I was awarded with this Yak Award. And to me, it's not a throwaway award because she sits here every day on my desk and she's looking at me with these beady red eyes and says, you don't need to talk right now. You need to keep it short and succinct and let other people talk. So she's been here taking care of me for a couple of years now, trying to keep me from being too verbose, actually. So she's been my good companion on every Zoom meeting.
I think everybody needs companion animals for their work. I, of course, have the two tigers. Have you met them before?
Yes, I have, actually. I have. They were there in the last podcast.
Have I told you their names?
I forget. Remind me.
This is Jesse and this is Katie.
And
for those listeners who don't know,
they're the tiger balls. Yeah.
Yes, those are the tiger balls. Jesse and Katie are two of Kodeco's longtime employees.
Absolutely.
So,
and I was going to show you, I have a whole host of, I have a tiny lion, and I have a Snoopy, and I have another Snoopy, and of course a rubber duck for decoding.
Always a rubber duck.
Debugging.
Always a rubber duck. Yeah, Yolanda the yak is not very good at debugging. She's just like, nope, I'm doesn't do that.
She just wants to talk, right?
She wants to stop me from talking, yeah.
Now, on the topic of talking and the most graceless transition I'll ever make on beat poetry, you've recently found out you're related to Jack Kerouac.
This happened just yesterday, because everyone hears the last name said, "Are you French?" I'm like, "Well, my grandfather's French, but I speak French." But I mean, if you live in Canada, you all speak French because they'll read the back of the cornflakes box, and everyone in Canada can say "flocon de mai," at least. But yeah, my cousin is kind of the family genealogist on my father's side, and he just dropped in the Facebook yesterday. Someone had asked him a question about lineage and stuff, and when he traced it back, he discovered that the Belanger line in this area of the world is related to Jack Kerouac. There's about, I think they're called the original 32. There's 32 families that came from France and settled in what was like Upper Canada at the time, which is Quebec right now. Very French area of the world for those that aren't familiar. But of these 32 families, one line, I forget the actual line it is, but Jack Kerouac was actually born French. I didn't realize that. And he didn't speak English confidently until he didn't speak English confidently until his high school years.
Wow.
Never knew that. Yeah, and fascinating. So I've only read a few of his things. I loved On the Road. I love all the beat poets. So it was really kind of cool to realize that through like the 75th cousin removed or something, that Kerouac is from a similar lineage that I'm from. So it's pretty neat. He's not my great uncle or anything, but it's just neat the connections that we have in this world. So
It's really
you go back
awesome.
and read On the
really
Road
neat.
again. It's cool. Yeah.
All right, so let's
Okay.
let's go ahead.
So we'll eventually get around to talking about the company we all share and rebranding. But I'm curious because I've seen you in our developer videos, and I know
Mhm.
pretty much the folks who've been around a long time started as devs, like started in their careers as devs. So how are you a CMO? How are you a chief marketing officer? Like where did marketing enter your life, and how do you feel about that?
Okay, so there's a long and twisting story, from which is the same for most people, I guess. You don't sort of wake up as a child, 8 years old, and say, "I want to be a CMO." No 8-year-old says that. I started coding when I was 7 years old. Actually, that's where I started. I've been doing it's been doing my whole life. But despite that, when I graduated from high school, I said, I think those computer programmers are too ivory tower-ish. I don't want to be with them. I want to do something more real. So I thought, I'm going to be an electrical engineer. And so I did it for the first 3 years, until I started to flunk some courses and realized that engineering really wasn't for me, to be honest. So I switched into computer science and said, okay, this is what I should have been doing all along. Do what you love, right? People tell you all the time, do what you love, listen to them. Did that, and I was a coder for 20 years. Now, the marketing thing is interesting because I can't just do one thing. Maybe you two are the same, and I'm sure a lot of listeners are the same. There's always that Sunday side project we have going on. And I can't do nothing. So back in the early 2010s, maybe before that slightly as well, I had a blog, and it was a health and fitness blog because despite my current physique, I actually am a certified personal trainer. You wouldn't know it to look at me.
Oh, cool.
But I know, I love this stuff. So anyways, I had this blog, and I would post a lot of reviews and stuff like this. It got some traction. And I said, I bet you I can monetize this, as we all did back in 2010 era. Started doing affiliate marketing, found out there was really slimy ways to do it. Tried to do it some really clean ways, learned a lot about SEO, learned a lot about copywriting. I'm an avid writer alongside as an avid reader as well. So I love written words. I'm a language pedant, like don't write the wrong "your" in front of me because I will tear you apart. But I had all these weird disparate kind of things. So I had the programming background, obviously, and I had this love for writing. I love teaching. I actually taught Java 1.0 years ago, 24. How old is Java? I don't even know. Like
it's
a long
old
time
now.
ago.
It's old.
It was old back then. I never liked Java, but so all these things, teaching and writing and the affiliate marketing and then the white hat affiliate marketing I used to do, all kind of converged. And I was actually fairly happy at this firm I was at. We were doing a lot of large scale and medium scale industrial programming, real time stuff, which is a lot of fun. And then Ray emails me out of the blue because I can't do one thing. I've been freelancing on the side, editing a lot of Ray stuff. And out of the blue, Ray emails me. This was back in 2016, which is a couple of moons ago. And he says, "Hey, crazy question. Would you like to come with us full time, edit stuff full time?" And I was like, do I want to leave a programming career and all the growth and benefits that comes with that? And I took the leap and never looked back.
Oh, wow.
So edited stuff, then as we grew, became managing editor, then became editor-in-chief. And then we realized, we've built a fairly decent company on luck and duct tape and string and sealing wax. And we said, what could we do if we actually doubled down and took marketing seriously? So I came over as the one person in the marketing group as the chief marketing officer, and I've spent the last year and a half building out the marketing place around here. It's been wonderful. This is something I love to do. I get to work with coders like you every day, so I never get too far from the coding side. So it was never planned. I do not have an MBA. I may get it someday, but just having worked with the audience for so many years, like all of our customers, all of our fans, all the people that come in and do stuff here, having just worked with them for years and been my own target market in a way, you talk to people because they're your colleagues, they're your friends. You know what they what their pain points are, and that's worked out well so far. So it's a really, really fun area to be in. I love working in marketing.
It's an
What a good
amazing
statement for
climb.
marketing.
It has been, yeah, it's been a roller coaster. It really has.
And you have contributed a lot, somewhat in the background, but as chief editor, as editor in chief, etc. The contributions have been numerous. You were one of the people who actually presented the idea of the rebranding.
I wasn't the original, but I tried to kind of bring it into something concrete, because Ray has always known that there's thousands of people that think Ray does all the stuff on the site.
Mm-hmm.
Ray writes all the books and Ray does all the stuff. And it's nice that people think that highly of him. But at the same time, we have over 300 content contributors around the world. And they're all contributing to a blog with someone's personal name on it. And it's like, and that's always bothered Ray, because it's never been about him. It's never been about Ray. It's always been about his team. He's a bleeding heart for his team. He loves his team. So we batted it around a bit because there was always this disconnect as well. Like, our core company was called Raceware. That's what Ray's indie company was when he started developing apps, and he was going to be the next big thing in app development, and actually did fairly well. But that was his company back there, Raceware. Then he started his blog, RayWendlick.com. Well, that took off, but the company, the LLC, is still called Raceware. So what do you do? So anyways, the RayWendlick.com brand took off. Raceware LLC is where we all worked and got paid. And there was always this disconnect. People didn't understand the connection. So, which made for interesting sales meetings and stuff like that.
It was especially interesting because if you actually went to raceware.com, it was sort of always perpetually under construction.
It was. It really was, because what were we going to say about our company? Yeah, we're like a couple dozen people that make RayWendlick.com happen. There wasn't much to talk about. But when our new CEO, Matt, who I believe was in the previous episode, came on, he said, we need to unify all of this. And I agreed. Ray had bought domains years ago, tutorialteam.com and stuff. We held on these domains for years, thinking, okay, when can we make the switch? And that time was never right, because we were too busy, we were too small, we were too busy, taking care of other things. Why rebrand? Because things were going just fine. So Matt said, why don't you put something together? And I said, okay, all right. And then the day before our senior meetings in December of 2021, I still didn't put together a presentation. So I actually took out my iPad and Procreate and my Apple Pencil and just sketched out about 15 or 20 slides and said, here's basically what I think we should do and why we should do it, and stuck them together as photos. Didn't even make a slide deck, to be honest, and just swiped through all these photos at our meeting. And that was the genesis of the decision that we should rebrand in 2022.
And what's truly amazing is having seen a lot of what's been going on the inside, the Ray Wenderlich site never skipped a beat. It continued to turn out tutorials and books and videos. It was like nobody on the outside could have known that there was this much churning going on inside the machine.
Yeah, it was, and that was by design. Like, we're not going to, we didn't want to interrupt anything, because that's a disservice to our audience, disservice to the team members that create the stuff. Like, it had to be done in parallel and kind of flipped, which is exactly what we did this past weekend. The engineering team built up everything in parallel. So we actually were running two sites side by side for about the last week or 2 weeks. So literally we had the Kodeco site and we had the Ray Wenderlich site running in parallel. And then all we had to do was kind of flip the theme over. Wasn't quite that easy. It's not just the theme. There's a ton of things in the back end. We have a ton of microservices and integrations and stuff and permissions with videos that need to be fixed manually. And so a lot of stuff that needed to be plugged in the background that we, couldn't do immediately. But yeah, it was always the intent. Can we build this up without interrupting anybody? And the engineering team just works miracles, given their size and the innovative stuff they come up with to say, what can we do so we don't blow everything out of the water, to make it as seamless as possible for visitors? Because we've got millions of hits a year. And, that takes a lot of orchestration, a bit of luck, and they did a great job.
I think I want to know more about what was in that Procreate not slide deck, and how'd you know when to rebrand? And I know you've shared, and we've got some notes
Yeah.
we use to chat with our guests. You've shared that you've been through a rebrand before. So how do you know when it's time to rebrand?
It's there's never a right time. It's like having kids. There's never a right time. You just have to do it. Or getting a dog as she sleeps somewhere in this house. Just do it. The it's what makes it tricky is because, again, and this is really kind of sloughing off the question to something else, but it's different for everybody, and you have to know A, your market, and B, you have to know how amenable your audience is going to be rebranding. Because one of the problems with rebranding, not problems, I guess challenges with rebranding, is that a lot of companies do it to save face. So if they've been involved in a scandal, if there's been like massive layoffs or they've been acquired, oh, let's just rebrand and erase history. So people are, noticeably a little sketchy around rebrands. And they're always asking,
Right.
what? Did you get acquired? So you have to measure that fairly carefully. You have to know, how does my audience, how will they respond to this? And we've got a lot of very loyal fans who've been here forever, so we knew it would be a bit tricky. But for us, we knew it was time because we were at a kind of certain critical size. And we knew that we were at a critical size, our contributor team was at a critical size. And more than just putting a new face on stuff, we wanted to unify all that team, because it's kind of weird that, hey, we're this company, but we have all these content creators. We needed something to unify everybody. So that was what told us more than anything. I think it was the right time to do it.
So what experience were you able to bring from previous rebrandings into this?
This was the hardest rebranding I've ever done. And I was only involved peripherally with two other rebrandings that happened in my life. One was while I was working. This is about 15 years ago. I've been working a long time. I'll say it's about 15 years ago. But it was a fairly simple rebrand because it was a company I was working for. We did a lot of health consulting, and they had a package of software. But they also had the same thing, because their name was Deltaware. Actually, they were acquired a few years ago by Maximus as well. I was there for about 7 years. So they had a lot of healthcare management software and healthcare financial software in their package, and they rebranded because we had 3 different kind of products and they all had different names. Their rebrand was to consolidate the products into one package and sell it to large governments, basically. That was fairly standard, went fairly well. New logo, new name. That went fairly well. The interesting one was when I was in university, actually. And I'll try to make the story short, but as I mentioned earlier, I set out life to be an electrical engineer. So at that point, the way it worked is that you did 2 years somewhere else and then came to finish off 3 years at what we call the Technical University of Nova Scotia, or TUNS, as we called it. Now, there's a plethora of universities in my city. Too many, but not enough at the same time. But anyway, so just before I graduated, 2000. So just before I graduated, the Technical University merged with Dalhousie University in the town. Go Tigers! Because it just made sense financially and logistically, and just bring the 2 campuses together under one. And the naming committee cast around, because you're bringing together 2 organizations, large organizations, old organizations that have very different identities. And they were looking, how can we merge these together and also get a name that people are going to be proud and stand behind? So we're there at the unveiling ceremony. I wasn't privy to the final name. I was kind of involved in some student groups and stuff who were trying to help, consult with the name and figure out what people would like. We're at the unveiling ceremony. It's a wine and cheese thing. Everyone's there. The presidents of the university are there. And they've got a plaque on the wall covered by a sheet. And they give some speeches, and then they unveil this plaque, and the name's terrible. And the room went silent. The room went silent. And it wasn't long after that they picked a brand new name, just kind of covered up the whole thing. I went looking a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't actually find evidence of this old name, but yeah, it was one of those things that everyone felt so good about. And then at the unveiling, they missed the mark. And now they're not doing it for the students. That's not who it's for, but it was such a low moment, I think. So so I've taken those ideas about rebranding to say, okay, so it's not always just about the name. It's about how you approach it. It's about how you inform people of it. And it's about who you involve as well. Because you can involve people, but if you know at the end of it, you're going to reveal something people hate, then you've done it wrong, to be honest.
So let's see, what was this quote here? Never ever deconstruct a working brand.
I hope this person doesn't come after me. There's always people that aren't going to like it, and that's completely okay. Like I remember when, Slack introduced a feature, and I was like so upset, and I tweeted at the Slack team. It's just like with such microaggressions with developers, right? We're terrible for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People change an icon, people change the color of the Twitter blue or something, and everyone loses their minds. But this one person on one of our social media platforms, shared in response to what we shared, which is fine, saying, they said, never ever deconstruct a working brand. And I found that really interesting because on one level, that's true. So I give them credit for that. The interesting thing is, though, is that a brand has a lot of different sides, and depending where you are, you see a different side. Like it's polyhedral, I guess, right? It's got all these different sides to it. So you've got the public perception, Ray Wenderlich, a pillar of the iOS and mobile community, and then you've got people inside the company who are getting paid to do what we do. Then we've got people on the content contributor team that love to share their knowledge and worth with the universe, and it depends which sort of facet of that multi-edged diamond you're looking at in terms of a rebrand to say, well, this is a working brand, and it wasn't broken in any sense. And I'm a huge fan of that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It wasn't broke in any sense, but it wasn't doing service from a different facet, not the customer facing facet, but like the team facet and our facet, because we have people from around the world contributing to this blog with a guy's name on it. And it's not really what the spirit is. So in that respect, it wasn't working well enough. I don't care if my company's named that. Customers don't really care what bottled water they buy from the store. They just want the bottled water. So it's like the name means something to them. But at the same time, the brand wasn't working in terms of us having a unified organization. And there was the confusion of the Raysware versus RayWenderlich.com. We tried to resolve with that as well. But really, it's to let Ray step back further from what he's done. So we've given him his name back. I hope he's enjoying having his name back. At the same time, I'm hoping that the team and the community as well feel good about bonding under this new name, because it's like a blank canvas. And Kodeco, what does Kodeco mean? It's not anyone's name. It doesn't mean anything, except that now we've given it meaning by bringing our team and our effort and the love for what we do behind this name. So now that is what we are. So in respect, we may have deconstructed a working brand, but it was only working on one or two of those sides, not all the way around.
Okay. Now, you have this branding, and you have this very well planned out Procreate sketch deck. How much planning actually went into how you were going to go through this process? What was your system of saying, okay, now we're going to do this?
Oh my gosh, I wish I could say that my little 12-slide Procreate deck was was all we needed, and we should drop a link to that in the show notes, because there's nothing proprietary in there. It's just about my philosophy about rebranding and how you know it's the right time and what it affects. It took a tremendous amount of planning. Our CEO, Matt Derrick, has a really great long form piece on the blog, which I'd like to link to in the notes as well. 319 days to building a brand, or as I think of it, overnight success in 319 days. It took a tremendous amount of planning, because what's tricky is not sort of just lining up all the to-dos to take care of this. And there are a ton, like from everything from our marketing materials to the website, to the engineering stack, to our content, to our team. There's all these details that need to be changed. But the biggest thing to manage was actually all the personalities and all the people involved as well. Like that was the hardest thing, because we're affecting a lot of different people here. So internally in the company, our huge team of content creators, our even larger team of customers. And then not only that, but we have a lot of like partnerships or loose partnerships with large organizations, JetBrains, Google, MongoDB, and others I can't think of off the top of my head, itty bitty apps, but places like that. Like this community isn't that huge. It's not billions of people. We've got good connections with like lots of people like the Flutter team at Google and stuff like this. And we had to manage that relationship as well. So a ton of planning went into managing the relationships with the brand, which is weird because a brand is an inanimate kind of amorphous thing. But this is what was hard. Like, what would the content team think when we said we're going to pick a different name? What would the company think when we told them? What would our customers think when we finally revealed it? Because you can't reveal anything too early in this world, or it gets blasted over Twitter. What would our industry connections think when we said we're rebranding? Would they think we were getting bought out or all this? So you have to get ahead of all of that. And
so how'd you actually do it? Like, how'd you figure out from when you convinced, that leadership meeting where you're like, I made these pictures and let's rebrand, and people are like, okay, let's, to, okay, what do we have to do in what order, and who do we need to tell, and how do we get buy-in?
This is where delegation comes in really, really well. So what I did, because this thing was massive, like I say, I used to do a lot of project management, and what I do, this is the biggest thing I've ever managed. A lot of it is picking really key people to delegate to, and we have a great company, very diligent, dedicated people. And from that, I picked, I think it was like 7 different team leads to focus on a certain area. And not necessarily exactly what their job was, but really kind of adjacent to their real true skills. So, for instance, I would put someone in charge of communicating with the content contribution team, because they work really well. They have a good trust level of communication of the content team. So that person was in charge of communicating and soliciting feedback and running stuff like that. I also had someone in charge of everything customer facing. So if it was like customer communications, support desk, things like that, they were in charge of going and thinking through, okay, what do we need to change? What do we need to touch? What could possibly go wrong? And what order do things have to happen? I did that for engineering. We did that for design. We did that for PR. We did that for marketing communications, and delegated. Not that I could sit around all day, but that was super key. That was super key, because there's no possible way I would know these areas as deep as well as these people would. And I said, go bring me a list of everything you think we need to touch. And they did really well. They brought back these huge lists, and then we had to sort through them. Where is it overlapping? Because you think, well, who owns this piece? Who owns that piece? And then we had to sort through everything with kind of overlapping responsibilities, and then divvied up by team. And that was probably the most important thing, I think, that we would tackle on this. Getting the to-dos done is just a matter of sitting down and cranking it out. And figuring out what has to happen first is actually easier. But getting experts that know the areas really well to come back and say, here's this list of things we need to do. And then just having the trust with them to say, okay, tell me the order that have to happen, and figure out how to do it.
Right. I think that's the buy-in right there. It's like the delegation is the buy-in. That's like, okay, I trust you to do this massive and important task.
Yeah. And even breaking it down 7 different ways, it's still a massive task. Each of those 7 tasks was still massive. And it's key to have these really good people to say, okay, you have ownership of this now. And the buck probably stopped with me as the owner and PM of this project. But I'm like, I trust you. I trust you to take this and do this and make decisions as well. You have to empower people to make decisions in the moment, because we can't all come back and just discuss, because we'd still be figuring out the rebrand right now. Go figure what needs to do and go make decisions. And that's the biggest thing you can do with any team on a project this size, is empower people to just go make smart decisions. And not every decision will be 100% right, but the decision's made. And in the end, that's usually way more important than getting the right decision.
Absolutely. We're nodding in strong agreement here.
You've been there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at parts of the time now, to be honest, we were also on the commenting committees at times. So So it's hard to ask these questions like I don't know some of what happened along the way. I remember seeing some of the original suggested
Yeah.
names that came through, and those were interesting. Oh, talk about the contest.
Oh yeah, one of the things we recognized early on is, we talk about buy-in. Our content contribution team, they're the lifeblood of what we do, and we said, it's easy to sit and dream up names, but let's make it fun. So we ran a little naming contest with our 300 plus content contributors, and we had some cash prizes, which was fun. And a lot of the people that won actually donated their money to good causes, which was wonderful to see. But we ran a contest and said, submit names. Let us know what you think will be great. And we got hundreds of submissions for this. And some of them were, interesting, because we said, what should RayWendler.com be if we had to change that name? And there were suggestions like not RayWendler.com, which is technically correct for, in very binary with developers. MattDerrick.com was thrown out as our CEO. KitchenSinkTutorials.net found its way into there. And then my absolute favorite of not the bad ones, but the funny ones was Compile and Pray. Was my absolute favorite. I think the domains, if people here want to go steal that domain, I think it's a beautiful brand name. Go steal it. But out of that, we got a lot of really interesting names. And what was interesting should come as no surprise to anyone who's ever been in development for about 10 minutes. Developers are very concrete and very literal. We expected, I guess I expected a lot of really kind of ethereal names or amorphous names that are blank canvas. But there's like some really concrete names like DevHaven, which actually was one of our favorites. DevHaven is actually a coding school for middle schoolers run by Yale, and I didn't want to go up against any Yale lawyers, so that was out. But also a lot of names with code in there and dev in there, and that was what led us down the path to Kodeco in the first place, to be honest, because we realized that. I mean, our content team is like basically our target market as well, except they're all gurus of what they do, teaching others. And I was like, okay, like if our content team identifies so closely with dev and code, because that came up a lot, because we did sentiment analysis and all the names too. Like, how do they lean concrete, very literal. So the code aspect, because dev didn't work in a lot of cases, but the code was kind of that nugget that brought us down to the Kodeco, code and echo. We've talked about that before. The naming code community as well is kind of what Kodeco means. Kodeco's got a lot of different things, but that naming contest was so interesting that it revealed people devs don't want some weird name that doesn't really mean anything. They want something that resonates, that identifies them to say, we code. It's what we sit down and do every day. And this is why they wanted dev in there. They wanted code in there. They wanted something that represented them. And I think that's where we eventually landed.
And it's a good landing.
Thank you.
It has to be. We're not rebranding again anytime soon.
No, it was a very long descent to that landing, but we got there.
And it was just a flip of the switch and everything worked.
Well, mostly. Like, I got to give props to the engineering team. They worked. We started doing stuff on the Friday before the go live. And that was like switching over our internal domains, emails, things like that. The engineering team stood up some stuff on Saturday as well. We started to rebrand socials on Saturday until we realized that Facebook was blasting out updates, and did not expect that. So 15,000 of our closest friends got an early taste of Kodeco, which was not planned, but whatever. You smile and carry on.
It's a soft launch.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing too. I mean, traffic is very low on the weekends because I believe developers actually have lives. We've discovered, so the weekends are very slow for traffic.
I may beg to differ. I may beg to differ with you there. We've interviewed a lot of developers here, and when we ask them what they do when they don't code, they code.
I know, and I was as guilty as that for years and years as well. But we stood up everything cosmetic really well. CSS is an interesting beast. We're still fixing CSS bugs. So it went well. There's still lots and lots of things to clean up, mostly unnoticeable.
Oh, And I know there have been little problems along the way. Our first episode was supposed to drop, well, our 0th episode was supposed to drop with the launch, and due to some scheduling issues, that dropped a few days later.
Yeah, things
Yeah, I
happen.
got the impression it was due to the gal who manages that just being so busy doing stuff. And I remember, as I think it
Yeah.
was over the weekend, we have a person based in the UK who's, I think, our frontline website support person. And I thought, is this person working round the clock? Because they are always answering
I
every question. When are
I
they
don't
sleeping?
I don't want to ask that question.
But
Everyone
there
on the
was,
engineering and design team was probably a little sleep deprived come Monday, so
yeah,
I
they
kept
were
my distance.
really available. It was
Mm,
amazing.
they're an
Yeah.
amazing bunch.
And we're hoping in a later episode this season to be able to talk to our lead designer about the
Yeah.
design side of it. I mean, something that's changed in the branding that kind of it goes beyond branding, but there's like this whole semantic graphical system to tell you what kind of content you're looking at without having to read. That's
Yep.
that's very modern and pleasing and beautiful.
Yeah, it's a whole wayfinding and orienting kind of design as well. The colors have meaning and evoke feeling. I'm not a designer. I like to pretend I am. And our designer, Luke, calls me on it all the time. He's like, really, Chris? I'm like, I tried. Okay, I know it's crap. I would love, because I talked about it, I kind of glossed over for 10 minutes today in a meeting, but it's fascinating the thought that goes into the UX. And, as mobile developers, any developers, we know that the UX is where the rubber meets the road in terms of human interface. But just the thought that goes into a large design system like we have here, it would be a phenomenal conversation, I think.
Yeah, I'm really interested to learn more about this. So we've talked about the enormity of the project, the complexity of the project. One of the things that you shared as we're talking about what to talk about is that your project plan when you started out as a project manager for this effort was really bare bones. So say more about that.
Yep.
Like, what was your project plan and why did you not do like a
Yeah.
massive, like, here are all these dependencies kind of thing?
So it's interesting. I mentioned I set up to be an engineer in life and kind of flunked out. So I went to computer science as a backup, worked out. Life is funny because the last firm I was at before I came to work with Ray was actually an engineering firm. So we did a lot of industrial stuff, but I was a programmer still. And I remember seeing like project plans, like Microsoft Project, printed out on the wall and about 15 feet long and about 5 feet deep, and always like it's this Gantt chart, right? The massive Gantt chart. And this is the start of the project. And you're like, that is in no way going to reflect reality. And not that it's not right, but the fact is it's massively intimidating and demotivating. So
It is.
I've
That's so intimidating. I've worked on
it
those
is like,
too.
here's all the things we have to do. It's like, yeah, we know, but you don't have to show us because you just want to crawl in a hole and die. It's terrible. So, and I've done the Microsoft project thing, the massive plans over the years, but I've realized coming into a team, and especially a remote team, because our company is 100% remote. I work in my home office. We have people that work at their kitchen tables and on the beach. I'm envious of them, but we're 100% remote and always have been. So what you don't want to do is be too over predictive at the start. You don't want to say, well, this will happen and that will happen. I came forth with a really basic project plan. And again, put trust in people saying, what do we have to do in this area? And they came back and we filled it out, but just a little bit, just enough for them to get direction to do the next thing and go a layer down. So as the months went by, we go from this really kind of simple project plan where everyone can say, oh, that doesn't look too bad. And then they get into it and start thinking about all the things and they write them down. They're like, okay, well, it still doesn't look too bad. It seems manageable. And then as you get closer and closer to the end, you have to get more granular about like, turn this thing back on that we turned off. Like there's those things in our project plan at the end. And it's really about not overwhelming people because it's so demotivating to say, here's 1,000 things we have to do. And we've only done about 7 of them in the first 2 months. It's kind of the antithesis for like motivating people on a project. So it worked out really well, but it's also because I was able to put a lot of trust in the people I delegated to. But It worked. I think it worked so well. Maybe I intimidated everybody. I don't know, but I think it worked out really well. And I've come to that kind of planning model by this point in my career. It works really well. You don't have to be super granular at the start, because if you have trust in people to make it granular as you go along, they will, to the level they're comfortable with. And we had to be flexible too. The engineering team does everything in Jira, and I respect that, like, totally. I use Monday.com for the first time for a very large project. Kind of like it, to be honest.
Interesting. I
But
always see ads for
yeah,
that. I've never used it.
I tried a couple of years ago. I was like, but forcing myself to use it now, it's got a lot of beautiful features. I'm actually paid for one of the larger licenses to manage dependencies and stuff. But anyway, the engineering team said, we do it in Jira. I'm like, no problem. The design team had a whole Trello workflow to get through stuff. No problem, because again, you're trusting people. I keep track of that marginally in Monday.com, but then other stuff is right in there. My MX team, the PR team, the content team, communications, the contest, it's all there. It's all there. And it works really well. But especially in distributed team, you can't drive them down with like, here's 500 things and what one did you do last week? It's just so demotivating.
So with without really having a Gantt chart calendar or anything to work off of, I know you talked about the fact that the team on launch weekend probably went a little bit crazy. At any time, was there under the gun feelings for this project, or did it feel like it was just sailing the way you wanted it to? I having just done a project where I had my launch date and I was depending on an external company to do an Android port of software. I remember being in the early month or two going, this is not going to happen. So, how was that under the gun feeling for you?
It was interesting. We didn't have a deadline until about 2/3 away of the project. We knew where we were going. We knew approximately where we wanted to land, which is about mid-October. And that was actually decided the December before, because we said, when do we actually do it? So I said, if we start now, in January, effectively, we are just past the summer slump when people are on vacation. We had a company retreat to deal with, and just before the Black Friday and end of year madness. So there was this little hill in October. We said, wait, that's what we're shooting for. And again, not getting too granular. We're shooting for that little hill in October. So there wasn't a feeling of under the gun, and people were working hard, because design, like getting to the branding agency took longer than we hoped, and then getting the designs together took longer than we hoped, and getting our communications together took longer than we hoped. But we knew we were behind, but that was okay. And it wasn't until 2/3 the way we said, now what's the date? The hill's in sight. What's the date? And we said, October 24th. And I don't even really know exactly what led us to that date, but it was just basically engineering. How long do you need? Design. How long do you need? Everyone else, how long do you need? What can you possibly get done by October 24th? And we just went for it. So at that point, we did feel under the gun. I'm probably a little laissez-faire about it. Maybe if you talk to our CTO, Sam, he might have a different story about it. Talk to our designers who are fixing CSS and seeing their beautiful designs rendered so poorly in the world. So they might feel a bit more under the gun. So, but until, engineering, it's a small team. They work miracles. I know they felt under the gun. I could feel their tension from like thousands of miles away. But not having this, what I would say, an artificial deadline early in the project really helped. It was when we knew we had everything defined and we were making progress, then we said, with the momentum we have, what can we hit? And we hit it. And I'm really proud of my team. It was, it's kind of an arbitrary date. Deadlines are always arbitrary in my mind. But when you have that date, when you're within sight of the goal, the team will rally. And all the teams did. And I'm so proud of them. So yeah, under the gun, probably. But we did it, and I'm really proud of that.
So, how do you feel the Kodeco team, the full-time team, grew as a company? And does this really augur the hopes of some other really big projects in the future?
Yeah, it really does. One of the wonderful things about this, I wouldn't do this again for a long time. But what it gave the internal company, if we look at the 25 of us, It's been a long time since we had a company-wide project to rally behind, because we've all been a bit siloed, doing this, and content does this, and marketing does this over here, and engineering does God knows what. But it gave something for everyone to rally behind. Every single person in the organization was touching this project, and that extended to like people on our content team, and it was so great. I hope it was a bonding experience. Some people don't bond well under pressure, some do, but I couldn't be prouder of what we've accomplished. I hope the rest of the team feels this way, but it was really nice to feel everyone pulling in the same direction. And, you know, we all do great jobs, but at the same time, for everyone to be working against a common goal, my gosh, that was like that's better than any trust fall or team building activity you could do at any retreat. And I'll have to check in with some of the team, because yeah, like when you launch something and it's super broken and you feel against the gun to get that done, maybe they'd feel a bit differently. But I think that gave the company a more unified sense of something. We all did this, and now this is the new us. In terms to your second question, in terms of what this sets us up for, we already had tons of stuff in the hopper to go ahead with. We launched boot camps this year, paid boot camps for iOS, Android, and Flutter. Those are going well. We're launching some more next year. Don't tie me to a date. I'll let you know. We're looking at things like assessments and certifications. We're looking at things like on-demand workshops for corporations, like so many things.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and those were all accomplishable under raywenderlich.com, but it's the Kodeco name is kind of a blank canvas in a way, because the legacy of what we do will always be here. But when you have a new name and new t-shirts and a new face, you start to think differently. You start to think even further than where we've come already. So it's like, what could Kodeco be? And it's really opened up some good conversations internally about, why aren't we doing this? We should do this. Why can't we do this? Let's try. And that's really nice to see too, the team coming together saying, what if? And that's the beautiful part post rebrand, the whole what if, like what else could we do? If we can do this, what else could we do? It's really, really nice to see.
And I told Ray and Matt, I said, I'm not going to ask because I don't want to know what's in the planning hopper that you're not able to talk about. But of course, some of us would love to see a Kodeco Con.
That is always there. Live events are tricky now because everybody's coming back online, and everyone's been kicking forward their hotel and venue reservations for years. So it's one of the most common questions I get, Drew, about when are we having a con? And yeah, we're itching to have a con again.
It's in the thinking process, but
it's mentioned about once a month around here at some meeting or other. It's and then like customers and team members and when's the next con? It's always on the, not the back burner. It's on a warm burner. Just got to figure it out
like
first.
A lot of the thinking around like running the boot camps and then, you know, bespoke corporate trainings like that will cross-pollinate into what the next con looks like.
It does, because we ran RWDFCon for years with the tutorial style. Everyone that big long tables with their MacBooks out, and that one guy that has a Windows laptop. There's always one with some Windows laptops surrounded by Macs. Following along by like just leaders in their field presenting on stage and stuff. And it's like, okay, that was good. And in a post-pandemic world, we start to rethink, okay, so, that worked in that context. Are there other contexts we can explore? And I love learning. We love teaching. That's all going to be core to what we do. How do we scale that up? How do we scale it down? How do we delegate that again? Like, what could a con look like? So again, it's opened up great conversations about what if. It's really exciting.
It's fantastic. So we've now reached this point where the secret is out, the name is changed. How do we gauge success?
Customer sentiment is probably the biggest way to judge it. This is why we had, like today, I'm all talked out. So we had an open town hall today where we invited anybody who wanted to come from the Ray Wenderlich community. So fans, customers, layabouts, whoever wanted to come to this, team members, and sort of hear from the horse's mouth, starting with Ray, like, we've done this and it's okay. We had surprisingly a lot of good feedback in that session today in the town hall, and there's always detractors, and yeah, there's always things that we do differently, stuff that we might change. And just like when Slack changes their icon, I have an opinion about it. Everyone does have an opinion. But that was fairly positive. Social media feedback has been fairly positive. Customer support feedback has been fairly positive. So we always keep an eye and an ear on everything. No, that sounds creepy if I say an ear on what everyone's saying, but of the conversations directed towards us as a company, we listen to every one of those. And in 2022, it's easy to think, oh, there's AI there's bots, it's going into like a junk folder. It doesn't. We listen to everything our customers say. We capture customer voice data, voice of customer data. We capture testimonials. We capture the bad things too about, okay, well, this really sucks. What should we do? So I think customer sentiment is one of those interesting data points that we collect all the time and always have. It's not obvious, but yeah, we read everything. We talk about everything. Every time someone quits a subscription, there's a lot of key people in the organization that get an email with their quit reason. So it's always in our face how our customers feel. So it's not about money. It's not about will we get acquired in 10 years. It's not about will we go public on the stock exchange. It's not about that. It's about how do the people that we serve feel about what we're doing. That's really super critical for me.
And I think that has been something that's been in the DNA of Raiseware, and mainly because it's Ray to begin with, and it's always been about the people who are gaining from the knowledge. It's always been about the people who contribute, the people who profit. It's always been about the people.
Well, and it was always inherent in what we did under the RayWenderlich.com banner as well, because, and not to be like that we're a super altruistic company, but we try to be. I mean, companies need to make money. We have to charge for what we do. We have to sell, and not everyone's going to like what we sell. That's the nature of the world. But under the RayWenderlich.com brand and the Kodeco brand, like code community, yeah, it's always been central to what we do. And in the whole like code echo, if you want to look at it that way as well, we always think that we're training the next generation of people who will train others, because we want that legacy to echo on. Now, they don't have to do it the Ray Wenderlich way, but take care with what you do, take pride in what you do. Share that knowledge with the world. The best way to learn something is try and teach someone else, and you learn something. Being married to a teacher, I know that very well. And I know a lot of things very well, actually. But from that, a lot of my eyes have been opened a lot by just talking with my spouse, a teacher, and just the struggles that the kids have when they're like 5, 6, 7 years old are still the same struggles that adults have learning in a lot of cases. And we just keep that in mind, that we are teaching the next generation of teachers here, because they will grow up, become team leads, and guide others. And we want them to do that in the best, holistic, healthiest way possible.
And it's nice because Kodeco already, from its history, offers so many different ways to learn. There are the tutorials, the books, the video courses, the education that people get off of the more technical episodes of the podcast, or even off of this one, predominantly if they're in marketing and want to learn that kind of thing. But there's an openness to say, I've got a new way of trying to communicate this. And I know that if somebody presented this to the team would basically go, let's try it out.
And that's the thing, because we have lots of different styles of products to kind of cater to different learning styles. If you're a subscriber to that theory, whether you're audio or visual or kinesthetic or whatever, like we have something that works for you. But then of course we think, how can we combine these things? Video and text, does that serve people differently? Can we do that in a different way? Like even like the transcripts that we're planning to have with all of our videos as well, like time transcripts and integrated with code and deeper explanations. Like there's so many dimensions to take it instead of just the face value of a book or a video. How do you combine those? How do you rethink it? How do you use those things in tandem with a live event to accomplish something? You just keep iterating on that. It's really
there's a
beautiful.
lot of fun
what
stuff
if, right?
there.
What if? Yeah.
How do you atomize all the content
and recombine it to make new compounds? Like it's chemistry.
Which sort of goes in line with that new visual language. It very much looks like a chemistry set that it says, well, it's one of these atoms, one of these atoms, and one of those atoms. And that tells you, okay, this is this is the platform, this is the type of education, this is the topic, and I love the new visual language.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because there's a whole our branding agency and our designers invented a set of iconography to identify what we do here. But then there's a challenge of how do you learn what the icons mean? One of the best ways to wayfind is with words, but where we don't always translate everything out of English, we have to rely on symbols and symbolism and pictographs as well to help people wayfind around here. And that's just another way to try to make this a little bit more accessible as well. Maybe it's not the perfect road, but it's, again, we're trying it. What if? It's quite nice. I like it. We'll see how it works.
I was really struck with, just as somebody who has also worked in project management, not only the trust you gave to people to fill out their area and to dive into their area, but I think it's a really beautiful thing that you let people use their own management tools. And there's probably a size company where that doesn't work, but I just wanted to
and
come
it's
back to that
interesting
because I thought that was really, having been in situations where I couldn't do that.
There's lots of situations where we can't do it. It was a leap of faith. Now, I've worked with these groups a long time. And so I had a lot of inherent trust in them to do good work because I've seen them do good work for years. There are places that would not work for sure. And, but again, it's about the right tool for the right task. And the engineering team needs Jira because they need their epics and they need the timelines and they need the interrelatedness of all this, the integrations with our GitHub repositories, like they need all that to just work. So what the project management layer does for me is abstract that a little bit. So I've got each microservice in there. Not everything has to be done with each microservice, for instance, among other things, but this microservice will be taken care of. And then I can liaise with the engineering team, say, was this microservice done? Tick, done. It adds a little more onus on the project manager to also understand all these systems. I've worked with Jira for years. It's pretty cool. I've worked with Trello for a very long time as well, almost since it came out. And I'm very used to things like Microsoft Project and now Monday.com. So you have to also be able to bridge all these systems because there's this danger where you can wade into this and I say, hey, engineers, if you don't speak the language of that system, hey, engineers, is this going? Yeah, it's going fine. But I know enough to go in there and see if it's not going fine. Not that I'd ever have the wool pull over my eyes with these teams because it's so great, but that's the tricky bit. And a lot of project managers, just by their nature and how they come up through companies, do not have that deep technical knowledge, which is just fine because that's not their job. But I'm really blessed in this unique space where I understand the development space, most of the full stack, not all. I would not even try to wade in there. But I also understand the PR and the management and the sales side and how that affects. So it worked out really well. I was happy to bring all those things I've been blessed with into this to say, yeah, I understand how designers work. I understand how devs work. I understand how PR people work and what sales is affected by. So that worked well. But you have to, again, it comes down to relationships and managing people. And you can extend trust to people, but trust is always earned, not given. And I've earned their trust and they've earned my trust. It's a two-way street. And that's what made this work. If I was injected into a new company, brand new team, I doubt this would work. So you get the more typical, traditional, heavy-handed Microsoft project up on the wall, 15 feet long, so that everyone is visible and knows what to do. But in distributed teams where there is a significant level of trust, this works really, really well.
And I think the most successful project managers are the one who have had their hands in the cookie jar enough to know how many, at least how the cookies go in the jar, whether or not the jar is holding the cookies.
It's interesting. It can be that way, but then sometimes if you feel too much affinity towards what people are doing, you sympathize with them too much. Not that I don't like taking care of people, but would I be more apt to excuse devs who were late? Probably, because I've been late on every single piece of code I've touched in my entire life. Would I be less apt to be, sympathetic towards sales because I was not in sales a lot in my life? Maybe so, right? So that's the bias that comes into all of these organizational relationships. And you have to sort of check yourself and say, okay, am I giving the engineering team a pass here because I was in their shoes years ago? And maybe you are. And maybe you are being too hard on a different department because you don't understand it well enough. So it's, again, good PM is fighting your bias against all these teams and saying you have to sort of just be very open about it and try to bring everyone to a level playing field and not let your biases get in the way of, giving people hall passes when they don't need it.
Lots of good stuff said in here. This is this should be a great episode. I don't know if we'll do a transcript, but like there's a lot of really good project management.
My yak is looking at me. I'm saying no, this is important. So she's quiet for the moment.
It's okay, Yolanda.
This is all great information, specifically because this has been a great brand change. This has been a very stunning show for a team that has so much support for the end product.
We love what we do here, Drew, and that's sounds like silly, like it's in a pamphlet for the recruiters and stuff, but we all have interest in learning and the people in this industry, and it shows in what we do. And it doesn't matter if you're in member experience, it doesn't matter if you're in sales, it doesn't matter if you're in engineering, or even if you're leading the company, or if you have just started here. It's great to see everyone move in the same direction because they love what they do in all their different facets in this industry, which is moving all the time and so much fun. It's why we all stay here, and it's why we do what we do. It's a really great place to be. It really is.
It definitely is. And I mean, Suzanne and I love doing the podcast and being part of this entire experiential process. Chris, I cannot thank you enough for your time and taking time out to be with us. I know it's been a busy 200 and how many days?
319 days.
319
almost an entire
days.
Year. Almost an entire year.
It's been a very busy year for you, and I really thank you for we're recording this days after launch.
Yep.
So it's still a bit chaotic, but we really appreciate your time. I really want to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, well, I've had a blast, and I can talk about this forever. It's funny because you bring all these skills like project management and your development and thinking about the marketing and perception of the customers and stuff. It's really rewarding to bring it together and have it go not too badly. Actually, it all worked out, and there's always doubts, and even post rebrand are like, did we do the right thing? Like, did we deconstruct a working brand? Like, what if they're right? So you make the best assumptions you can going forward. And oh gosh, this has been so much fun. I love geeking out about project management. Thank you, Susanna. And yeah, it's been great to talk about this. It's good that it's over. Still a lot of cleanup left to do. But yeah, just having the ability to have a team that did a great job. I'm so proud of all of them. And now we have a lot of what if to think about going forward. And that feels really good.
Well, thank you again, Chris.
It was great. It was great to get to understand this better, to understand the management perspective on it better, and to get to know you better and see so many skills that you're bringing to the C-suite of this place.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It is not me. It is the amazing team that does everything around here. I just push the buttons and use spreadsheets, I guess. So that's what I do.
If you want to reach out to any of us, of course, I am Podcast Drew on Twitter. That's DRU. Suzanne Gupta is Suz Gupta, SUZGUPTA. And, of course, Chris is Crispy Twit, which is CRISPYTWIT. We'll have those in the show notes. But other than that, that's going to wrap things up. We will see you all again in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. And that's a wrap. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the Kodeco Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to leave a rating in your favorite podcast app. See you next time.